Hey, good morning, ROCKPOINT. This is Pastor Daniel coming at you with today's daily devotional out of Genesis chapter 45. We're going to look at the life of a guy named Joseph today. At a point in his life where he's older, he's risen up the ranks, and he's in a position of power in the Egyptian government. But Joseph's story started pretty terribly. He had some siblings that didn't like him for a bunch of different reasons, but essentially just because he was his dad's favorite son, and he was kind of arrogant, kind of a punk, and they just didn't like who he was. And so his brothers literally sold him into slavery, got rid of him, tried to just banish him from the family. And Joseph goes through the rest of his life without really knowing his family. And then God, through a bunch of circumstances, a famine hits the land, and his brothers need the resources that Egypt has, that Joseph has now been put in charge of. They actually come to Joseph to try to get some food. And this is the first time that Joseph's going to see his brothers again. And this is what he says to them in Genesis 45, verse 4. It says, "Then Joseph said to his brothers, 'Come close to me.' And when they had done so, he said, 'I'm your brother Joseph, the one that you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been a famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and no reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance.'" And here's the key verse in verse 8. It says, "So then it was not you who sent me here, but God." Joseph's response to his brothers could have been absolute annihilation and destruction. He could have, because of the position of power he was in, he could have had his brothers killed. He could have taken them and sold them into slavery to have them experience what he experienced. But Joseph has gained God's perspective on why he went through what he went through, and he understood that even though what his brothers did was wrong, what his brothers did was evil and bad and not good, he understood that what God does is he takes all things, including the things that are done to us that are not good, and he works them for his purpose. And Joseph understands, you guys tried to sell me into slavery to get rid of me, but God used selling me into slavery to get me into the position that he ultimately wanted me to be in. And I think he actually is going even further to say, if I hadn't been sold into slavery, I wouldn't be walking into my purpose, my destiny now. And the reason that I say this to you is because I believe that some of us have walked through some really difficult situations and some really difficult scenarios, and some things have been done to us, some life has happened to us. And my prayer and my hope to you this morning is that you would begin to gain God's perspective on your situation in your scenario, and that you would understand what the world, what the enemy meant to destroy you, God will use to encourage you and to build you and to get you to where he wants you to be. And so I don't know what it is, what resentments or strongholds you are holding on to, but my prayer and my challenge to you this morning would be that you would release those to God, and that you would begin to ask God to give you his perspective on your situations, that you would ask God to show you his purpose in the middle of the pain, because the good news of the gospel is that in Jesus, all of it works towards his good and our gain. So I love you guys. I'm praying for you. I hope you have an incredible day. We will see you soon.